Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar tonight. We are still a little bit early. We have about 4 minutes to go, and we will probably start on time, and we're just waiting for others to stream in. Thank you very much again for spending this evening with us, when we'll share a little bit more about how we're going to manage our finances and amidst these difficult times. And we'll also have some exciting news for you. In the meantime, please feel free to go onto the Facebook Messenger and just say hi to everyone. Christopher Tan is with me here as well.
Hello, everybody. This is Chris. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And for those of you who are already on Facebook Live, thank you so much for being punctual. We're going to start sharp at 7:30. So like what Chuin Ting has said, if you feel friendly, and it'll be really good if you're friendly and you just say hello, just put on your comments page, hello, everybody. And I think it's going to be a great encouragement for speakers like us. We can't hear you. Unfortunately, I can't even see you on Facebook Live. So just go to the comment box and just type hello, and then we can see that you are here. Okay, so just be patient with us. We will start very soon.
And during the session, if you have any questions, please do feel free to type them into the comment section of Facebook Live, and our colleagues will be on hand to answer them. And if we can't answer them, then or don't have time to answer them, at the end we do have a Q&A session where we'll take the questions live, moderated by our colleague Sherry. So once again, welcome to MoneyOwl's webinar. We are so actually quite glad to be doing this together, Chris and I, to do this webinar together, and we'll be starting in a few minutes. But yes, do go onto Facebook and say hi. Thank you again. We know it's a weekday evening, and we hope that you have had your dinner. But we promise that we will have a good program. Probably not too long, we hope.
So we'll start in about probably 2 minutes. Okay, so I hope people are, all well rested. You have taken your dinner. It's a weekday evening, and we're just appreciative that you join us. Hope everyone is staying safe. You're still well. I think most of us are still working from home. Yeah, but I hope you have had a good rest. Even though we're working from home, I know that sometimes it can be more tiring. Yeah, so we'll speak to each other very soon, probably in 1 or 2 minutes' time.
So thank you for coming early. We'll be starting really in about a minute. So thank you for coming early, and we will, indeed, we will want to honor your time, as we always say, because all of your time is precious, and you have taken this evening to be with us. So just a moment for us now as we wait for some others to start streaming in.
Those of you who just came in, we also said that if you feel friendly, you want to encourage us, please just go to the comment box and then just type hello to everyone. Just welcome everybody in. Can't see each other, but well, we just pretend that we are in a room. So just say hello to everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's 7:30, so I think we'll make a start. Thank you again, everyone, for being with us tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to MoneyOwl's webinar on how to better manage our finances as we brace ourselves for the recession at hand. My name is Chuin Ting, and I am the CEO and CIO of MoneyOwl. Co-hosting the session with me today is Christopher Tan.
Hello, hi everyone.
Chris and I really wanted to do this webinar today because with COVID-19, our lives are in upheaval, our economy is in recession, and the markets are filled with worry. And perhaps many of us too are anxious about our finances or about our investments. So we hope today to give you some handles and suggestions, and also announce what MoneyOwl has decided to do to help us better manage as breadwinners, as investors, and just as ordinary Singaporeans. So I will now hand the session over to Chris to introduce MoneyOwl to us, and also introduce our agenda and start us off on the first section. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Chuin Ting. Okay, once again, a very warm welcome, everyone, to our webinar this evening. We have entitled this evening's webinar to be how to better manage your finances and brace yourself in a recession. So right at the beginning, I thought that it would be good just to introduce who MoneyOwl is. I'm not going to assume that every one of us, we know MoneyOwl well. So please just bear with me for a few minutes as I introduce MoneyOwl. So MoneyOwl, we are a trusted, comprehensive financial advisor to our clients who are the ordinary families living in Singapore. Our clients prefer to work with an advisor that is comprehensive, competent, as well as conflict-free. And they prefer to work with a firm that is prudent and careful in managing their wealth. And at the same time, our clients need to feel that the firm they are working with is in this business for the long haul, because financial planning is really a long journey. Yeah, it is a lifelong process. And if you do not know already, MoneyOwl is Singapore's first bionic financial advisor. And what this means is that clients, you are served by a team of trusted human advisor, trusted human advisors who are augmented by technology. And also at MoneyOwl, we are very proud to say that we are very comprehensive. In fact, we integrate national schemes. Yes, we do provide insurance planning, investment planning, estate planning, and of course, comprehensive financial planning. But beyond doing all that, especially for our comprehensive financial planning, we actually integrate it with national schemes such as CPF. And that is not the same as using your CPF money to invest, but rather for those of us who are Singaporeans or PR, CPF is a very important part. It's an integral part of our retirement planning. And we start your financial planning using CPF as the foundation. And again, if you do not know already, MoneyOwl is an NTUC social enterprise, and it was established in 2018 as a joint venture between NTUC Enterprise and Provident. And both companies, well, we have spent decades doing what is good for the consumer and doing what is right for the consumers. So with that introduction, let me now go to the agenda. What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, firstly, I'm going to start first by talking about how we can better manage our finances, the mindset that we should adopt, especially during this period of the pandemic. And after that, I'll pass the time to Chuin Ting, whom she will take us through a session on how we can make good investment decisions. And then as a wrap up, I'm going to tell an inspiring story. And I hope we all stay to the end to hear this story, because this is a story that has never been told to the public. Okay? And right after that, as promised, Chuin Ting is going to make an exciting announcement of some of the changes, some of the launches that we are making at MoneyOwl, and then we go into a time of question and answers if there are any. But along the way, as you put in your questions into the comments box at Facebook, okay, some of our colleagues will be there to help answer some of the questions, because sometimes your question needs to be answered before we move on. And as a speaker, it's not easy, right, to look at the comments and then try and answer and try to speak at the same time. So we've asked some of our colleagues, especially from the advisory team, to help us take some questions. So if you have questions, feel free, just put it into the comments box, and then we'll try and answer them as soon as possible. But however, if you still have questions towards the end, I just want all of us to know that there is a time whereby you can ask those questions, and then Chuin Ting and myself will try our best to answer them. Okay, with that, I really want to jump in because we have quite a lot of content to cover. And like what Chuin Ting has said, we really want to honor your time. We want to end punctually. So I'm going to jump right in. And I want to start first by showing us the story of the stock market from the start of the year. And that's really between 1st January 2020 to 23rd of March 2020. And this is the S&P 500 index representing the US stock market. And actually, if you are investors, we know the story. And this is the story. You see the S&P 500 at the beginning of the year, starting at $30,251, plunging all the way down to $20,775. It is a massive drop of 30% from the peak. And I'm sure we remember that day when it fell so much and there was a lot of panic in the market. And whilst all this was happening, there were news from media. And in fact, after the fall, news continued to come in from media. These were some of the headlines. Washington raised big bailouts to help US economy survive coronavirus. This was just before the depth of the fall, March 18, 2020. And then Bloomberg, March 20, 2020. COVID-19 supply chain shock born in China is going global. Bad news. Oil plunges below zero for the first time in unprecedented wipeout. Again, that's from Bloomberg, 20th April. And then May 24th, from The Guardian, China raises US trade tension with warning of new Cold War. Again, bad news. If the world is not trading, that is bad news for the stock market. And then CNBC reported June 28th, coronavirus cases worldwide top 10 million with nearly 500,000 deaths. And then last and definitely not least, and not the last headlines that you would have read back then, from Business Insider, 30th July, US GDP plunged by a record 33% annual rate in the second quarter. And that's just very recent. Now, whilst all these were happening, take a look at the story of the stock market. And this again is the S&P 500, right from the bottom, 23rd March 2020, it picked up all the way until 5th August 2020, just last week. So the market came from 20,775, and as at 5th August 2020, it recovered to 30,903. And that is a huge recovery of 48% if you didn't exit your investment earlier. So what am I trying to say? Does that mean that economic data are useless? While the media were reporting and economists were predicting and reporting about GDP numbers and all the news that I've shared with you earlier on, and those were all bad news, the market should be falling. But it didn't. It grew and it recovered by 48%. So does that mean that we shouldn't listen to the economists? Does it mean that we should ignore economic data because they are useless? Well, not so. It is not like that. It is just that I think sometimes we have used the data wrongly. We have focused on the wrong things. What do I mean? Well, every one of us, we have a personal money equation. And for those of us whom you have listened to us in our webinar, you know that I always bring up this personal money equation. I know it is not new, and I've said it many times, but please bear with me for the next few minutes, because although this money equation is a very simple equation, I feel that it is still a good time, especially in the middle of this crisis, to use this money equation to reflect and learn lots of lessons from this simple equation. You see, like I say, all of us, we have a personal money equation, and it all starts with income. And after we take away our savings and we take away our fixed expenses that we cannot avoid, whatever is left behind, we can use it for our variable expenses. And the savings that we have, if we invest it, multiplied by returns, compounded by the number of years, hopefully that will help us reach our future goal. And so there are really two sides to our personal money equation, the left side and the right side. The left side of the money equation is really about our short-term financial planning. It is what I'll call the boring side, okay? But a very important side, because this is the side of the money equation that helps us become rich. And this is the side of the equation whereby we can have better control. On the right side, it is really our long-term investment strategy. This is the side that helps us stay rich. Now, most people think that the right side, the investment side, is the side that helps us become rich. No, it is the left side that helps us become rich, but it is the right side, the investment side, that helps us beat inflation to help us stay rich. It is also the side that unfortunately we have lesser control over, because we cannot control the market. But you know, most people, they are more interested to focus on the right side because it is the more exciting side. And so when we hear all those economic data coming in, we tend to gravitate towards the right side. We feel that we need to make some changes to the right side. But the right side, like I say, is the long-term investment strategy side. And we do not want to use short-term data to make changes to a long-term strategy. Rather, this short-term economic data is meant for us to take stock of our left side. So what is our left side? Our left side starts with making sure that we increase our income and protect it. How do we do that? Well, we continue to be the best in what we do, and we remain relevant in good times and bad times. And if you are able to do that, we will ensure that we will have a job, and in fact, we will have the ability to increase our income. And after we have our income, it is actually very important to protect it. Why? Because there are life risks that can stop our income from coming in, things such as death, disability, and a medical crisis. And that is why it's very important to use suitable and low-cost insurance to protect our income. The left side is also about our savings and expenses. It is about increasing our savings by controlling or reducing our expenses, and this can be done through good budgeting. It is also the side that we talk about managing our debt, lowering it, making sure that we live below our means. And it is also the side that we talk about ensuring that we have sufficient emergency fund, especially in a time like this. If there is someone at home, maybe your spouse, that has lost a job, it is important that you have sufficient emergency fund. And if we take care of the left side well, the right side will take care of itself. It allows us to stay invested for the long term to get the returns that you need. So this is our personal money equation. What adjustment do we need to make during stress time like this with regard to our personal money equation? So on the left side, if we still want to maintain or in fact increase our income and protect it during times like this, especially so if somebody at home has lost a job, well, perhaps we need to consider taking a side job if that's possible for additional income. Or there are plenty of grants during this period. Now the good thing, unfortunately, quote unquote, good thing about being in a crisis is that the government usually has a lot of grants for us to make use of, and it's a good time. Now, whether you are not doing very well because you've lost your job or you're doing okay, this is a good time to look at all the possible grants that you can take to upskill yourself. And also at the income side, perhaps you may want to consider renting out a room just for an additional income. We don't like it, but we may have to make adjustment to it because this is stress time, is not ordinary, not usual times. And for some of us, we may have to look at some of our personal assets that we can sell. I know it doesn't sound good, and I assure you that I've gone through times like this more than 2 decades ago, and I had to sell some personal assets because I didn't have enough income. Well, this is a difficult time, and we may have to make some changes to protect that income. And during times like this on the left side, it is also about lowering our expenses, perhaps to maintain savings or just to survive. In some ways could be deferring payments, restructuring expenses or activities. For example, relooking at our insurance portfolio, because sometimes we spend lots of money buying insurance that actually does not provide us with sufficient cover. And perhaps it's a good time to look at how you can lower your insurance premium, but still maintaining that coverage. That's what we do here at MoneyOwl. Or looking at restructuring some activities, perhaps even children's activities. I know as parents, and I'm a parent myself, we don't like that, but perhaps we need to look at some of the activities that we might not be able to do for now to lower our expenses. We have to perhaps also eliminate our expenses through getting rid of things that are no longer necessary. I call that decluttering. And for those of us considering to use our ordinary account to invest, and financially, if you are not healthy now, like I say, perhaps someone has lost a job at home, this is not a good time to do so. You might want to keep your ordinary account money as emergency. You might not want to invest your ordinary account money. And perhaps you may even need to stop your regular investments or what we call your regular savings plan. You do all this to make sure that you can go through this tough time, and you do this also to make sure that you can remain invested if you have already started some investment. But I just want to pause a while and say this, that even though there are some of us here in the room that we are not going through this stress period, perhaps our job is very stable, husband and wife, we still have a job, a crisis is also a good time to relook at some of these things. So maybe tonight is a time for us to think about, if I look at the income side and the expense side, what can we do? What can I declutter? Perhaps the crisis doesn't hit me now, but it may happen in the future, and this is a good chance for me to relook at especially my expenses so that I can stay invested for the long term. But there are really three variations to the personal money equation. The first one is what I call the YOLO personal money equation. The YOLO's personal money equation. YOLO stands for you only live once. And if you adopt this money equation, you have the mindset that, well, I want to live up my life today, and I don't care about tomorrow because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So you live it up today. But if you do that, the downside to it is that you won't have a good surplus. And because you want a good future goal in the next time, in order to reach there, the only way to get there is that you must have high returns. But the problem with getting high return is this: the higher the return you want, the higher the risk you have to take. And the higher the risk you have to take, the higher the uncertainty of reaching your goals, the higher chances of it affecting your health, the higher chances of it affecting your family relationship, higher chances of it affecting your career because you can't focus on your career, your mind is all on the markets, higher insensitivity to community issues, you have no time. And if you have a faith, you might even be insensitive to spiritual matters. And adopting a YOLO personal money equation will lead us to buying things that we don't need with the money that we don't have to impress the people we don't even know. And that's really a joke, isn't it? And we'll be gripped by money, servant to money, and we worship money because money leads us. And forever we will live a life of discontentment. And that's the first variation of the money equation. The second one is what I call FIRE, financial independence, retire early. A person who adopts this money equation believes that I should push everything to the future, is delayed gratification. I will delay all my enjoyment, all my spending to the future. I scream and save right now so that I can retire as early as possible. And so if you adopt this money equation, then what you are saying is, yes, I work on my income. I want to make sure that my income goes up, but I cut my expenses as much as I can so that I can have a huge surplus to reach my future goal, to save towards my future goal. And because I've got a good surplus, my returns do not need to be that high. Now that seems to be a smart move, but is it? Because the problem with the FIRE equation is this, is that we don't have a contract with God. We never know when we will be taken away. And there are things that cannot be delayed, like building memories with parents, building memories with our children. There could be some charities that you want to be involved with, you want to give, some purposeful activities that you want to do. And sometimes you might not get a chance to do this if you delay it further. That is the flaw of the FIRE personal money equation. And the last money equation, which I really would want to ask us to consider, is the WISE personal money equation. Now, WISE is not an acronym. It just means wise, as in a wise man. The WISE personal money equation is one whereby you believe, yes, it's increasing your income, you lower your expenses, you live below your means so that you have a good surplus, and you use this surplus, yes, to invest towards your future goals, but also you are wise to have a balance. You take a part of the surplus and you invest it in purposeful activities today, because life does not start 20, 30 years down the road. Life begins today, and you accept that because we don't have a contract with God, you may go anytime. You want to do these purposeful activities today, and some things, like I say, you can't delay to the later. So between wise and smart, the FIRE one is smart, it seems smart. Perhaps wise is better. So which personal money equation do you want to adopt? And I want to leave that with you to ponder for a bit. I'll come back to talk about this. But I want to move down to my final slide before I pass it to Chuin Ting. Because if we have taken care of our left side, we are now ready to now invest on the right side, right? But the question really we want to ask ourselves is, should I be investing during these stress times? Well, maybe we offer you some handles. Firstly, we would say that you only invest if you are financially healthy. Really, okay, if your left side is taken care of, only then should you invest. And I just want to emphasize again that whilst we are tempted sometimes to invest even our ordinary account money because we think we don't need it, well, if you are under stress, you might not want to do so because your ordinary account money is a good emergency fund to pay off your mortgage if you lose your job. Secondly, investing is definitely not a quick way out of the left side equation. What I mean is, if we think that, yeah, I'm not getting enough income and I just want to make short-term investment, do day trade to earn a higher income, that might not be a good way out, and Chuin Ting will expound on it a bit more later. And the last point I want to share is the short-term crisis. This short-term crisis does not change our approach and should not change our approach to investing in the long term. But to do that, it makes it even more important to get our investment right. And I'm going to pass this time now to Chuin Ting, which will take us through a session on how do we make good investment decisions. Chuin Ting, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Now, as we explore what investing wisely means and what it means to invest in the right way, perhaps we should first start from asking, why do we want to invest in the first place? In short, we invest in markets because we want to grow our savings, and the markets are a good way of doing that, and in a way that beats inflation. Yes, through bonds including, but especially equities, or we call them stocks, because investing in stocks has that high probability of helping us grow our money successfully to beat inflation over the long run. Now, some people think that investing in stocks is a kind of paper or kind of fake activity, but actually it's not so. When you invest in the stock of the company, what you're actually doing is that you're owning a part of this company, and you're owning a part of these companies' net profits. So when you invest in many stocks around the world, you're actually owning a share of all the profits of a lot of productive activity of many companies around the globe. Or in other words, you are actually investing and participating in global economic growth, which helps us to keep pace with inflation and grow our hard-earned savings. So as Chris said, whether we should invest now depends on your financial health. Why we invest is to grow our wealth faster than inflation. But how should we invest? Generally, there are two ways of investing. And let me go to the next slide here. There are generally two ways of investing, and the first is quote unquote active investing. Active investors aim to beat the market, to outperform the market by being smarter, better, and faster than everyone else. Generally speaking, they do one or two of the following. First, they pick stocks or regions or sectors that will do better than other stocks, regions, or sectors, either because intrinsically these are better in some way, or because of valuation, for example, or because of the external macro environment that is currently prevailing or which are projected to be. The other aspect of active investing is timing the market, buying at the lows and selling at highs, or changing the mix between equities and bonds, usually based on reading economic data, but also market sentiment and valuation data. The other way of investing is what we call market-based investing, and this is what MoneyOwl recommends. As the market comprises everyone, it is actually mathematically impossible for every active investor to be outperforming. Market-based investing comes from a place of being content to capture the market return without guessing or forecasting, and invest in broad, globally diversified portfolio. That is a portfolio that buys as many stocks of as many companies from as many regions as many sectors as possible. On the same basis of trusting in markets, market-based investing is about staying invested in markets through the short-term ups and downs of the market, with the confidence that in the long run, the direction is up. So there are actually two sets of contrasts between active and market-based investing. And let me tackle the first set of contrasts, which is about selection versus diversification. Now, diversification is often talked about in terms of risk management of a portfolio. The idea is that if you hold, say, 2,000 stocks and it's $20,000, you hold 2,000 stocks and you put a limit of, say, $10 on each stock. So if one company fails or goes bankrupt, you lose at most $10, which is about 0.05% in my example. Now, this is especially important in the current COVID crisis when you see big companies, big names like Hertz and so on, actually going down. So diversification, yes, is definitely a risk management tool. But less common train of thought is actually diversification is also a driver of returns on your portfolio. How does this work? Diversification makes sure that you are invested in the winning regions, sectors, or companies at any time. And let's take a look at how this is so through a series of charts. I will move quite quickly from now. First, in terms of regions or markets, among the various markets in the world, over the last 7 years, you see that the US, represented by this blue line, the US market has massively outperformed in these last 7 years. Now, if you had invested $10,000 around the beginning of 2013, you would have made a good increase of up to $25,000 in just about 7 years, which is about 14% compounded return. So you would have been a very happy person if you had put all your money into the US market. However, it was not so in the period before this time. And here in this chart, you see that if you had started around the beginning of 2001 with $10,000, after 13 years, you're still at $10,000 if you were investing in this period in the US. Asia, ex Japan, however, was a real outperformer. And this is where, if you had been invested in US instead of Asia, you would probably have kicked yourself. Let's move then. What about sectors? If I ask you today, what is the best sector in the market? You would say, well, tech, of course. Your FANG stocks, right? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. They really outperform. And this is what we've seen from 2013 and on the gray line. Now, energy has really been doing badly, and that is the blue line that we see here. And if you had put all your money or a lot of your money overweighted into the tech sector, you would have been an absolute fund manager, star fund manager over these last years. But again, it was not always like this. In the 15-year time frame, starting around 1998, you actually see that the tech stocks, especially after the tech bubble burst, were actually a laggard, as represented by the gray line. And it was actually energy, which was the star here. So, but what is the alternative to picking the sectors then? Actually, in this case, if you look at it, if you had been invested in the orange line, which is actually the broad market of the S&P 500, you actually ended up in a better place, provided you stayed invested. So actually holding the market portfolio in this case, or rather the diversified portfolio of the S&P 500, has helped you to gain the best of both worlds, in this case, of both sectors. It's the same with companies. Now, even though stock pickers would swear by their ability to separate the wheat from the chaff through fundamental analysis, some companies, perhaps you view they are intrinsically built to last, aren't they? General Electric, stalwart of the US market in the 1990s. All CEOs and managers have to study this in business school. But today, it is actually one of the smallest listed companies in the US. Apple, once actually was the smallest, was very small. And you saw all this from 1993 up to about 2004. But today, as we all know, it is one of the biggest. So the question is, can we actually easily pick good companies during the right period and depend on that star to always deliver for us? It is actually very difficult. So the thing is that in every market period, there are countries, sectors, and stocks or companies that will thrive. And there are countries, sectors, and companies that will do badly. Even during a period like COVID-19, if you own a diversified index, actually you are owning the winners of the day. Consider this. Yes, it's COVID-19, economic activity is down, we're working from home, and we're doing a webinar, not a physical event. But are you watching this on a PC or a Mac? Or maybe an iPhone or Android? Did you buy toothpaste, toilet paper? I'm not sure how much, but I'm sure you did buy some. Did you buy kitchen towels from Kleenex? Have you watched Korean drama on Netflix? Or maybe Peppa Pig, like me, because I have small children? Did you buy masks? Did you order McDelivery? All these are produced by companies in the major indices whose stock globally diversified portfolios like those of MoneyOwl invest in contain. So we diversify to make sure that we don't have to guess. We have a line in the water to catch the fish. And we diversify, therefore, actually to hold winners and to protect ourselves both on the downside and on the upside. This chart here shows the benefits of diversification, or actually maybe the risk of non-diversification. If you go for market return in the global stock portfolio of all stocks in the world, the average annualized return over this period is roughly about 7.2%. If you try to pick and you pick wrongly, and you start to exclude top performers, your annualized return drops to below 3 or even to a significant negative annualized numbers. So are the odds worth it? You know, at MoneyOwl, our investment philosophy is about giving you the most reliable way of getting the sufficient returns you need. And the market has returned. But what about fund manager skill, advisor skill? That has no reliable return and is just too risky to bet on such hubris. So we've talked about security selection versus diversification as the first set of differences between active investing and market-based investing. The second set of contrasts between active investing and market-based investing has to do with market timing. Now, market timing has many alternative names, such as global macro strategy, dynamic or tactical asset allocation, and there are many nice sounding attributes for active investing, such as especially market timing, like being nimble and data-driven and so on. But ultimately, active investing is about choosing the right time to sell equities and switch to bonds or cash. And you want to do this before equities come down, and choosing the right time to buy equities and sell bonds to catch a rally. So say if you bought here at the beginning of this time and you held it all the way until here, you have gotten the average return of this time, annualized, say maybe about 7%. But if you always manage to buy around the bottoms here, circled in orange, and you always manage to sell around the tops, then you should be doing better than that, say 7%. So does it work? If you believe in market timing, consider this study, which we adapted from Michael Mabusin, a gentleman who used to be the CIO of Lake Mason. If you take the S&P 500's returns of about 41 years between 1978 to 2019, you see that the average or annualized returns were 8.7%. Take away the worst 50 days. So if you market time well, you take away the worst 50 days, your returns will jump to 16.4%. But if you took away the best 50 days, if you missed just the best 50 days, your returns will have dropped to 2.6%. Is this sufficient, 2.6%, for your goals? The second study we have here is done by Mr. Burton Mackell, who wrote the famous book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And he shows us this, that we adapted this study again, and over the last 67 years, in 46 years, markets have risen. In 3, they have been even, and in 18, they have declined. So what's the conclusion really from these 2 studies? Well, firstly, if you're wrong, you're in a very bad shape. And what are the chances of you being wrong? It's actually 3 to 1 against you. And this is a very stressful way to invest. And you aren't betting $1 or $10 or $100. This is not 4D or the lottery. And just a side story that I bought 4D for less than maybe 5 times in my life, and usually it's a group bet or an office bet. But someday last year, somebody was very nice to me, and I thought, wow, this is my lucky day. And I said, maybe I should go and buy 4D. And lo and behold, I passed by an empty booth in the Great Wall sitting near the washroom. I said, why not? Now, I didn't know what to do, so I took so-called financial advice from the lady behind the counter who said, if I wanted to bet $20, I could do 10 big and 10 small. Now, apparently the big means that you win the small prizes and the small means that you win the big prizes or something complicated like that. Don't really understand that. But anyway, I did what she said. And at 6 p.m., I checked the Singapore pools, and of course I won nothing and I lost $20. But did I care? Not really. I knew the odds were against me, but it is just $20. But what if it was something important? What if it were your life goal? And you know the chances are bad. Not as bad as in 4D or lottery, but it's 3 to 1 against you. Would you stake your retirement? Would you stake your children's education on this bet? I'm sure the answer is no. Yet many people do it too often and too much. And even today, really when you hear a lot of talk about whether people should sell because equities are too high, that is actually a market timing call with the odds that I've talked about just now. The objection is there's no upside to the market. How can there be when the economy is so bad, when there's a risk of a second COVID wave and so on? But the thing is, actually, if you look back into history, it is quite normal for markets to move forward ahead of news. In past crises, stock markets have always moved ahead. If you look at the chart here, this is during the global financial crisis, and the bank stocks actually bottomed up and all stocks actually bottomed up in the first quarter of 2009. But banks are still failing. And in fact, even the speed of bank failure, which is you can see by the slope, has not actually even slowed. Yet the markets bottomed before then. In the tech collapse in the early 2000s, you saw that companies that don't have a strong credit rating issuing high yield bonds, they have to pay a lot more, represented by these credit spreads here. But these started coming down, which means things started improving way before the cumulative defaults of these companies have peaked. In general, in past US-centric crises, according to this set of studies, and there were others about savings and loan crisis and so on as well, markets have led fundamentals by 6 months up to about 2 years. Now, why is this so? This is not because the news is wrong or that the headlines you're hearing, they are faulty. But the thing is, news and data reflect on things that are past and present, and markets move beyond it already. Markets look ahead to the value of the future dollar of the companies earning those dollars. They do not price in the dollars today. Now, this is not to say that there might not be a double dip, but market participants price in the future value based on collective wisdom, knowledge, assessments, be they economists, be they analysts, be they policymakers, be they news and data about vaccines and all that. And in this collective wisdom and knowledge, this is where prices emerge. And again, we're not saying that there might not be a second dip, but rather it is not so unusual that it's worth stressing over. So perhaps you'll say to me, Chuin Ting, okay, fine, I can't do this, I can't do all this active investing and beat the market, but maybe professional fund managers can do it. So surely, they work in sovereign wealth funds, they work in big asset management firms, banks and all that. They would have the skill to do the active part, would not? So let me just show you some very simple charts that show you the report cards of active managers. This is in the US equity managers and the percentage of those who outperform the S&P 500, which is the index. You would see that across all time frames, only a minority of active managers outperform. What about emerging markets? Emerging markets are supposedly less less liquid, or less efficient. It is the same picture. It is only a minority of fund managers, active fund managers, who manage to outperform the market across all time frames. What about bonds? There's a lot of misunderstanding about bonds, that bond markets are not as efficient and all that. And we don't have time to go into that today. But suffice to say that it is the same picture. Over here, in the period of about 20 years in the US, fixed income mutual funds started with 1,843 funds. After 20 years, only 42% of those funds were still in existence, and only 10% of the original funds outperformed their own benchmarks, whatever they were. So then, all right, perhaps you say, let's then choose. Can I choose those winners? We just stick with the winners. We stick to the winning horses, and we just stick to those fund managers. And surely I will outperform the market then. Well, welcome here then to the class of 2015, where we have the top quartile of fund managers by performance, 567 that year. These were top of the class. And we would try then to pick our fund managers among these 567. The problem is that after a few years, these people aren't there anymore. Most of them have actually dropped off. They're no longer top performing. By the fourth year, only 23 out of 567 are left. And by the fifth year, only 5 are left. This means that if you try to pick the top fund manager based on performance to outperform or perform well against the market, you only have a 1% success rate of being able to do so. These charts I just shown you tell us that most active fund managers do not outperform the market. They do not manage to avoid lower losses on the way down or to capture more upside on the way up. And those who do not manage to do so consistently. And so this points to outperformance by active fund managers being more luck than skill. But the good news actually is that we learn from history and economic logic that you don't need to stress out trying to invest this way. What does history actually tell us? History tells us, firstly, that a major crisis happens and hits the market every now and then. Not every year, not even every 2-3 years, but perhaps every 10 years or so. It does happen every now and then. The second lesson is that no matter how bad a crisis, the market always recovers. No matter how bad a crisis, the market always recovers, and the stock market goes up over the long run. Now, why is this so? Let me give you the economic logic first, and then the empirical evidence. The logic is that the stock prices of companies in aggregate, as I described early on, it's actually a stock is actually ownership of a company and of its net profits. So stock prices actually are a reflection of earnings, ultimately, in the long run. And if stock prices are driven by earnings growth, what are earnings driven by? Earnings are driven by demand growth. And what is demand in the global aggregate sense driven by? Global population growth and increase in the standards of living. And this has actually always been so. Here is a quote actually from the famous J.S. Mill from the 19th century. So Mill says here, what has so often excited wonder is the great rapidity or speed with which countries recover from devastation, be they man-made disasters like war or earthquakes and natural disasters. And there's great ruination, yet in a few years after, everything is much as it was before. Perhaps in this pandemic, in a few years, would we not look back and say, it was bad, but it has also passed. And this actually is this story of the spirit, the human spirit, the ability to rebuild, reconstruct, recover after crisis. That is the underlying life force of the markets. And what this means really is that what we learn from history is that you can stay invested. You don't need to time the markets. And what does staying invested mean? It means you get the average return of the market. You may not outperform, but you also do not bear the risk. Remember the odds of 3 to 1, the risk of having a low or even negative return. It is less stressful, but you have to have two conditions. Firstly, you must have time. If you're going for 100% equities investment, you must have at least 10 years. And secondly, you must invest in a global diversified portfolio. You invest in the broad market. If you only have one stock and it failed in this crisis, there is no hope of discovery. So that was the theory part. But let me now show you a beautiful picture to illustrate this trend of long-term stock returns empirically. I think some of you who have attended our webinars, you have seen this before, so do bear with us. But I think you don't mind seeing it again because it is something that gives us actually great comfort. Now, this is a chart showing the annualized return of the S&P 500 over the last per year, over the last 90 years. So let's zoom in, and this is how you read it. Each box represents the annualized return of the market from the beginning of the year at the top of the column to the end of the year at the bottom of the row. So assuming that you have started investing in the S&P 500 in 1928, at the end of this year, you have made a whopping 43.6%. If you continue to stay invested, the next year's average returns would have dropped to 14.7%. This is a per year annualized return, not the total return. Why has it dropped so much? Well, it's because of it was the start of the Great Depression. But you'll still be all right because cumulatively, you will still earn about 31%, which is 14.7 compounded for 2 years. But if you had stayed invested, then by the 4th year, you have lost all your gains and actually made a cumulative loss of more than 44%, or an annualized negative 13.5% per year at the end of 1931. Let's fast forward now to the global financial crisis, which is closer to our times. In 2008, if you're invested at the beginning of that year, at the end of the year, you will have lost 37%. But if you look over 2 years, the loss has moderated, cumulatively 20%, and on an annualized basis, 10.7% loss compounded over 2 years. 3 years is about negative 8.5% or negative 2.9, 3 times over. But when it comes to 5 year, you're in positive territory again. So we color-coded this chart, and where all the green represents the positive returns and the reds and pinks represent the negative returns, with the darker colors meaning more positive or more negative. So if we're doing this as a physical conference, I will ask the audience and say, what's the first thing that you notice about this chart? And the audience would say, well, most of it is green. And yes, indeed so. And isn't that great? Because what this means is that as investors, most of the time, most of us, no matter when you start, in most time frames, are making money. And this gives us great encouragement as investors. The second thing we notice is that the reds, the very negative returns, are actually along this diagonal. So what this means is that very negative returns tends to be experienced over a short term of 1-2 boxes, which means 1 or 2 years, or at most maybe about 3 years. And thirdly, where there are large, long clusters of reds and pinks, this is when multiple years when you're still losing money after a number of years. This happens every now and then, not all the time. Here we have the Great Depression, the dot-com crash, and we missed one here is the 1973 oil crisis. Now, the fourth thing we can notice here, or what we can do, is that if you go to the start of these crises and you count the number of boxes, you can actually arrive at a time when you come into a zone where there's no more negative returns, when there's actually no more red or pink box, which means that as long as you can cross these number of boxes or number of years, you are in a safe zone where there is no more negative return. And how many boxes or how many years is this? Including the Great Depression, it's about 15 years to reach the safe zone. If you exclude the Great Depression, this time is shortened to about 10 years. So what this means is that it doesn't matter when you start investing. If you stay invested, as long as you can cross this line, you'll be fine. You will not lose money, at least based on historically. This is not to say that 10 or 15 is a magic number, but I hope it gives us some comfort that no matter how bad markets seem to be right now, or where we are and where you're starting, because we do not know whether you started to invest when the markets are up or when the markets are down in the short run, whether it was a short-term peak or a short-term bottom or in the middle. As long as you have time and you can cross the line, you would be fine. What if you don't have so much time? Well, this is where you add bonds to your portfolio, and perhaps a balanced portfolio. 8 years would be your safe zone. But overall what it means is that it gives us confidence because it is your time in the market that matters and not timing the market that works. It might be counterintuitive, but it is the discipline of keeping to your plan and sometimes the discipline of doing nothing that helps you to manage the risk and reap the rewards. Whereas active investment management actually adds to the risk and turns a temporary decline into a permanent loss. So let's not confuse motion for progress or activity for effectiveness in any parts of our life, and least of all in our investments, which is for our goals. So in a nutshell, what should you do if you're invested? What is the investment decision that you should take? In a nutshell, if you're invested and you have been advised the right way, you stay put. The work is done before the volatility happens. The asset allocation of your portfolio between bonds and equities should have been decided already, matching your need, ability, and willingness to take risk. The diversification of your portfolio globally and across many companies and sectors is done at implementation. And if you are a MoneyOwl client, you will also know that we use low-cost market-based funds from Dimensional, which as fund managers also stay invested and don't make forecasts even as you, the end investor, stays invested. And as we always say at MoneyOwl, investment is only one part of your financial plan and should be viewed holistically, because what you do in one area of your finances inevitably affects all other areas, because we do not have unlimited finances. And money being a common thread running through our entire life, we need to view each decision, including investments, comprehensively in the context of a plan. So before I end off this section, I want to summarize really how we should be making investment decisions wisely all the time, including during this crisis. What is wise investing? I'd like to suggest that wise investing is really not about getting products that only the big guys used to have and we can now get access to. It's a smart thing to do, but it's not really what it's about. Wise investing is also not about doing better than others or doing less bad than others. And this is where we need to be cautious when we look at projected returns, because it's not about that. And may I even suggest that wise investing is not about maximizing return or even risk-adjusted return. Rather, investing is actually not an end to itself, if you think about it. Investing serves our financial plan, our overall financial plan. And in turn, your overall financial plan serves your life purposes. So at MoneyOwl, yes, our investment philosophy, well, on one hand, it's about diversification, it's about trusting markets, it's about staying invested. On another level, it's really about this. It is about choosing to focus on sufficiency of returns rather than maximizing those returns, and on attaining a high reliability of those returns so that you can meet not your financial goals, but your life goals. And you can do so with peace of mind, contentment, and restedness. Let me now hand the session back to Chris for the next section.
Thank you very much, Chuin Ting, for sharing. Now, for those of us who are still with us, I thank you very much, because I know it's been a long evening. Many of us have to work, and we are tired. And it has been fast and furious over the last 60 minutes. We have downloaded quite a bit. You have heard my sharing on the personal money equation. You have heard Chuin Ting sharing on the investment bit. As we come to a close of this webinar, and we are almost coming to the end, I thought it would be good to leave us with something for us to take home and something for us to think about. Because after all our sharing that both Chuin Ting and myself we have made, I just want to say that there are really 3 types of decisions that you may need to make in this crisis. So you're still there. I hope you listen in, because it'll be good to think about what these 3 types of decisions that you may need to make. And perhaps at the end of this webinar, this would be a good time to think about it. Now, I wish I have more time, but I just want to say this again, that in a pandemic, in a recession, in a crisis, it is probably the best time for us to make this decision. So don't waste a good crisis. I think Winston Churchill, he himself said this. So this is now familiar to you. The first decision that you have to make has got to be your financial decisions. What are some of the financial decisions that you have to make at this time? I mean, not all of us are in a crisis. Some of us are actually doing okay. We have a job, our spouse has a job, and our job is pretty secure or certain. But maybe you do need to think about how do you even strengthen yourself further so that if something bad comes in the future, you are in a better position. Or you want to strengthen yourself further so that you are ready now to make investments towards your future. But if you are in a stress period of your life, I'm very sorry, this is unprecedented, it is indeed tough. Some of us, we can't even talk about investing. We are talking about making sure that we can make ends meet. I've shared some ways, and perhaps tonight is a good time to think about what are some of the ways I can adopt. So what financial decisions do you have to make? The second decision, obviously, is the investment decisions. And after hearing Chuin Ting, we all know that regardless of time, it doesn't really matter when you start, we can actually start investing. So perhaps for some of us, we would want to consider this. Is there an investment decision that we want to make during this time? But perhaps the most important of all these decisions, in my opinion, is this question of life decision. What life decisions do you need to make today in this crisis? Because sometimes in a crisis, things becomes clearer. Things that are more important, things that are of priority, we suddenly realize that maybe we have neglected them. And so even as you are in this webinar hearing us speak, yes, we talk about financial, we talk about investment. Yes, we would like people to invest with us from a business perspective. But before you even do that, what actually we really want you to think about would be what are some of the life decisions you need to make perhaps. And if you're okay at this point in time, how do you channel some of your money to pursue some of these important decisions, some of these purposeful activities? So 3 decisions that you have to make. I did promise all of us that I'm going to share an inspiring story, and it's a story that has never been told in the public. And I think this is a story that even the staff at MoneyOwl have not heard. This is the story about MoneyOwl CEO Chuin Ting, and I've asked her for permission to share it. You see, like many of us, Chuin Ting came from a normal family living in a 3-room flat at Kim Kiat, and you do not know where Kim Kiat is. It is somewhere in Toa Payoh or near Toa Payoh. Well, she was academically bright enough to be awarded a MINDEF scholarship to study at the best university in the world. At least that's what the top university guide says, and that's Oxford. That was where she also met her husband, Golo. So yes, she was a scholar, and we all have certain idea of what a scholar is. But yes, she was a scholar with a job with the civil service. And really all she needed to do was to continue staying where she was, and she would likely climb the corporate ladder very quickly. A scholar, right? Have a secure job and earn lots of money. And maybe today she would even be a minister, if you know what I mean. But well, that didn't happen because some 14 years ago, Chuin Ting made a decision to leave MINDEF. And together with her, her husband Golo also left his job. Why did they make this decision? This is so that they could go and take a year out after so much work and sacrifices for the 9 years of their life, so that they can have a life, a proper life as a married couple. At that time, they were on the verge of buying an investment property, and if they had done that, and that was sometime in 2006, they would probably be quite rich now. But that required them to continue staying on in their job, striving at their workplace or striving at their workplaces at the expense of their health and maybe, perhaps even their marriage. So they gave up that idea. They did not make that investment decision. And with that combined, or with their combined CPF, they could pay for years because they were staying in a HDB, They could pay the HDB mortgage of just about close to $700 per month. And interestingly, her husband Golo, whom always has an interest in property and even became CAIA qualified, those of us who are property agent will know what is that. He went for a course, and when he was in that course, being a Caucasian, Golo is German by the way, his coursemate asked him to join his property agent group to sell the District 9 to 10 new launches. And again, another opportunity to become rich. But they decided taking that year out was more important. And back in those days, people thought that this couple were crazy, young, and perhaps a bit you only live once mentality. But you see, both Golo and Chuin Ting decided to make a life decision before making financial decisions because they knew then at a young age that there were things more important than money. Though financially it was indeed tough for them, but they made some tough financial decisions, adjusting their finances or adjusted their finances to support their life decision. And well, the husband went on to be without a job for a total of 4 years, so I was told, so that he could pursue a master's program in Chinese studies. So this is a German pursuing Chinese studies at Cambridge and Peking University, which subsequently allowed him to be a university professor, something that he is really enjoying right now, something that he is really passionate about. And after that 1 year's break, Chuin Ting took a significant pay cut to enter the financial industry and subsequently did a CFA, without which she may not be CEO of MoneyOwl today. Why did I ask Chuin Ting for permission to share her story when I heard about it? Because I thought it was a great illustration about our life, because our journey in life is always about balancing between these three decisions: life, financial decisions, and investment decision. And I hope her story has inspired you to first make a life decision, and then we adjust our financial and investment decisions to support our life decision. And you know, it all begins at the top. This is what MoneyOwl is also about. Many of you, well, you might have heard of Wise Saver. What is Wise Saver? It's a saving option that was launched by MoneyOwl quite recently with the underlying fund investing in Sing dollar bank deposits. Managed by Fullerton, which is Temasek owned. It gives a higher return than normal retail deposits. With liquidity, no lock-in period, and you expect low to almost no risk because the underlying fund is really investing in fixed deposits. No sales charge, no advisory fee, no platform fee. You only pay, well, Fullerton, the underlying fund fee of 0.15%. MoneyOwl, we don't earn anything at all. But if you do not know already, and some of you who are in the social media space, you would have read that as compared to the rest of the robo-advisors out there, Wise Saver was the lowest or has the lowest projected yield amongst all the cash management products out there. Lowest. So what's the big deal? Why did we launch something that gives the lowest projected yield? Because true to our mission, we were balancing between a financial investment and a life decision. Financial decision. Wise Saver was meant for you to park your emergency fund. And I talked a lot about it at the beginning. It is the left side of your money equation. Emergency fund is of utmost importance. It is for you to dip in when you lose all sources of income. And therefore, when you park something as an emergency fund, when you park into something for the purpose of emergency, it has to be the safest and the most liquid. If you need the money, you need the money. And by the way, liquidity is not defined as how fast you can get the money out. Liquidity is defined as when you need the money out, you need it fast, plus as much as possible, the capital must be preserved. That is why it is an emergency fund. And from the investment perspective, but if you really want a higher return, just invest into one of our MoneyOwl's portfolio. You can invest in our most low-risk portfolio that is primarily into bonds. You don't have to use a cash fund to do that. But like I say, the most important decision, and perhaps the most difficult for us, was to make a life decision. If we intend Wise Saver to be a place to park safe cash, we need to be honest about what we offer, even if it means that we are being perceived as not competitive. So it's not the highest yielding, but then if we want to be honest to our clients, we have to find something that is the safest and the most liquid. Could we put some other products in it to ramp up the return? Sure. But would that be honest to people who intend that to be an emergency fund? And if you do not know already, if you go to the MoneyOwl website, you'll realize that we periodically update the yield to reflect the current yield environment. It is not, we are not using a projected return. We are not using last year's return. We are periodically updating it to reflect the current yield environment. This is how we balance between making a financial, investment, and life decision. So, what good lifelong decisions do you need to make today? I'm going to park that with you. And like I say, perhaps tonight's a good time to think about this. I'm now going to pass the time back to Chuin Ting. And again, as promised, we're going to make what we think is exciting for you as an investor. So Chuin Ting, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for telling the story. I have also never heard it before in this form. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for listening. And thank you, everyone, for staying with us for the past hour plus or so. I think we've heard that really the philosophy of MoneyOwl is not just a financial philosophy. It's actually a life philosophy. It's a values philosophy. And we believe in what we do personally, in the decisions that we make for portfolios, for clients. And we really want to continue really this mission that we were set up for, which, as you know, MoneyOwl is owned by two corporate parents, NTUC Enterprise and Provident being the firm that was founded about 20 years ago. And we are here to actually make really a social impact. And it starts really from doing good, doing right. And we want to do this for everyone, for the man in the street. So especially amidst the current stresses of the COVID-19 situation and recession, we want to help everyone to manage their finances better so that they can continue living wisely, living well, and through these stress times. So we have 3 initiatives to announce today. Now, first, we'll be making it easier for everyone to invest wisely, and we're going to lower investment fees. Now, this is something we've been testing, hearing from you about, and thinking through for a while. Now, prior to today, we had a flat fee of 0.65 or 65 basis points per annum across all tiers of investment. And there were also platform fees to pay to iFast as transfer agent and custodian of 18 basis points. In view of the current situation, we will be effectively charging through a format of a rebate, 0% rep fee on the first 10,000 of investments until 31st of December 2021. So almost 2 years, or 1.5 years. Our overall fee structure will also shift to what is stated here, 60 basis points for amounts up to $100,000 investment amounts. And beyond that, 50 basis point advisory fee. And there's no expiry date to these core changes to 60 and 50 basis points. We will also shift our besides shifting our overall fee structure, we will also absorb the platform fees. MoneyOwl will pay iFast the platform fees of 18 basis points. And so clients do not have to pay this anymore. So as you can see, with the new fee structure, we have significantly reduced the cost of investing, especially for smaller investors who want to make a start. And this is our way of helping everyone to be able to continue investing wisely. Secondly, there will be some of you who want to go beyond a simple investment or quick start, you are ready to plan and you have deeper accumulation planning needs. You maybe want a holistic view, not just of investments, but of CPF. You want to use our proprietary CPF analyzer to forecast or to project rather what your CPF life payout might be. You want to know how to allocate that precious, scarce dollar between your spending now, your insurance needs, and your investments. You can take the opportunity of our Bionic Comprehensive Financial Planning Service at an introductory price of $99. Now, thirdly, we know that not everyone can invest and not everyone is ready to do a full comprehensive plan, especially in the current stress situation. We will therefore be offering without charge group financial resilience workshops conducted by our in-house, very experienced financial literacy team, whose consultant and master trainer is Chris. These workshops will focus on cash flow management, budgeting tools, and also debt management. And in a group setting, our trainers will coach participants on how to build resilience and prepare for the future. So really, as an NTUC social enterprise, we want to arm Singapore working families with the means to thrive amid all the stresses and uncertainties. And with these initiatives, we hope that for be it first-time investors or people who want to make a quick start in investments, those with deeper planning needs, or those who are not yet ready to invest, that overall, more Singaporeans can gain access to good financial management no matter where we are and what our situation amidst difficult and uncertain times. So that's the end of the announcements, and we're happy to now enter into a Q&A session. And over to Sherry.
Hi everyone, hope you guys can hear me. So I'm Sherry and I'm from the marketing team at MoneyOwl, and I'll be moderating the Q&A segment for tonight. So I just want to thank everyone for staying till close to the end of the webinar, and I hope the announcement was something really exciting for you guys to kickstart, especially for those looking to kickstart their personal finance journey. Yeah. I also just want to say a quick thank you to the rest of the MoneyOwl team who have been helping us answering questions throughout the webinar. And now this is a very special moment that everyone is waiting for, that a rare opportunity to get your questions answered by both Chuin Ting and Christopher. So get your questions rolling in. I have a very important question. Have you guys had dinner?
Not for me.
Not for you? Oh,
I did.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Okay, I have one more question. So how did MoneyOwl come up with the reduced rates they just announced, and like the thought process behind the restructuring of the fees?
This sounds like a question for the CEO, not me.
Yeah. Well, first we should set the context, and as much as Chris tries to disclaim responsibility, actually he and I are both founding directors, the two first founding directors of MoneyOwl, and I think it's important to know that MoneyOwl does not see itself as a robo-advisor as such, but a comprehensive, full suite, human-centered advisor that happens to have an investment robo, or actually maybe 5 robos. But as opposed to an investment robo-advisor that happens to have some clients' experience added on. And so when we started our investment services maybe about a year ago, we really looked at how human advice is being delivered in Singapore. And we brought down the industry sales charge to 0. We brought down the rep fees from the industry standard about 1% or so to about 65 basis points, because IFAS as platform has to be paid. We brought trailer commissions and thus conflict to 0. And then we added the tech platform for ease of use. But we maintained that human advisor element and that financial plan-centric elements. We did not look at investment robos because we never aimed to be an investment robo. We just wanted the best of human empathy, human wisdom, best of comprehensive services, and combined with the best of technology. So I think context is important because it really guides how we do many things actually in MoneyOwl, including the pricing. I would say we're priced with 2 considerations in mind. One is to provide value to clients that is unique in the context of a Bionic offering, but still keep costs low enough so that clients can enjoy that good and sufficient return for their goals. And 2, to be sustainable in our business, because we have a social mission for which we want to be around for a long time for everyone. So over the past 1.5 years, after we started 65 basis points, we actually have been testing various price points with groups of clients and promotions, 0.3, 0.5, to see where the right point reflecting both value and sustainability is. And this is where we have landed at. Yeah.
Perhaps I can just jump in and just add on and say that, I think to us, financial viability is very important. Many of you know that I founded one of the parent companies of MoneyOwl, which is Provident, and we have been around for almost 2 decades. And having gone through various crises, we know that the financial viability of the company is very important. And at MoneyOwl, we could have easily, slash the rate as low as we want. But the question whether from a business standpoint, does it make sense, right? And therefore, when we first started off, like what Chuin Ting has said, we decided on a rate that we think that it still makes sense for the clients, but it's also financially viable for MoneyOwl. Because if you are a client, you want us to remain viable in the long term because your financial planning journey is lifelong. But of course, over the last 1.5 years or 2 years, we have, like what Chuin Ting said, we have tested certain price points, and we realized that, we can make certain adjustments to make it even more competitive. But at the same time, as an NTUC social enterprise, we can also be doing this in the long run for you. Yeah, so really that's the key decision. We are not a company whereby we burn cash very quickly, and then after that, you can raise more money through a venture capital, and then after you go 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds. No, that's not what we are in for. Yeah, so I thought I want to share it also from a business owner perspective. Yeah, we want to remain viable in the long term to serve you as our clients.
Yeah. And I think for this particular pricing, you see in our pricing, first 10,000 to be free for 1.5 years is really in our heart to help people get started, especially in this very rural doing. And as you know, we start actually about $100 or even $15. We are not really into the getting $1 million a piece clients, although we welcome you too, but it's really because of what we are set up to do, which is the
Okay, that's a really wise approach. Thank you for answering, Chuin Ting and Christopher. I do have one question from Ariel Sun. She asks, do I need a lot to start investing to have significant returns?
That sounds like a question for the CEO as well.
I think here, where we start off is actually, we were saying that investing is actually in support of your financial plan, and your financial plan is support of your life purposes. Okay? When we start investing, you might be young, you might not have that much surplus, but you have a very, very great resource, which is time. Right? So if you have time, the magic of compounding is such that this is where you actually grow your money, and you grow your money to beat inflation, and you'll be surprised at what how it actually goes there, in there. So I think the main thing is you should make a start if you can, if you're financially healthy. So take care of your left side, but once you have that on the right side, start with that. And the other thing that we always encourage you is not to think about timing the markets, or therefore like let's accumulate a big lump sum, and then when you think the time is right, you go all in. Actually, what really works better is to have a very disciplined plan of investing regularly and building up your nest egg, sort of in a slow and boring way, but it does work. That is the compounding effect of investment returns.
Okay, I hope we answered that question, Ariel. Okay, we have one send their question through Messenger by Tan Jia En. So there is a lot of saying that a second wave of pandemic might hit the various economies. I know it is hard to predict, but shouldn't I be prudent and wait a bit more?
Yeah, I'm going to take that question. Otherwise, something was there and I was leaving to the CEO. Okay, I'll try and answer, and of course, Chuin Ting can strengthen an answer after I've given my Well, yes, indeed, it's true. And well, throughout this webinar, we have said that, yeah, you are right. It's really difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future. And it's really difficult to predict whether a pandemic, a second wave is going to happen. And well, even if it happens, and even if it will happen, I believe that the stock prices today would have already factored that in. Yeah, but as we were sharing just now, that this crisis is a short-term crisis. I mean, our definition of short-term is that it's going to happen maybe this year, it's going to happen the next 2 years, but it should not affect your long-term investment decision. What this suggests to all of us instead is that, well, if you know that a possible second wave might hit, and it's going to hit the economies real bad, the question we need to ask ourselves is that, have we taken care of our left side of our money equation? Do I have sufficient emergency fund? Do I have a secure job? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. How can I lower my debt? How can I lower my expenses? Because if we have taken care of that well, in fact, we should look longer term. We don't know when it's going to hit. We don't know when it's going to hit. Then perhaps we can start investing right now. If you want to be more prudent, then don't invest everything. Invest slowly. Do a regular savings, do a regular investment. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Chuin Ting, if you want to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think really it's interesting because we hear actually quite a balance of factors for and against. It's like a debate, and every day you if you want to watch CNBC, I don't really recommend it. It's a mix between a heart attack inducing thing and a financial porn, sometimes we call it. I can give you as many factors why yes and why no. So in fact, just before coming on the webinar, people are saying, oh no, now we're just waiting for the vaccine, it's almost ready. Economic data is actually not that bad. You have a situation, actually savings and income actually rising, and things like that. So again, markets actually incorporate all of these things, and it is really about how you're going to manage yourself as you go ahead. And it's really stressful, right? You have to keep watching, am I missing out? So let's say markets go down 10%, will you capitulate and invest? If markets go down by 10%, when are you going to do it, right? So that is actually really about not having to do that, but invest slowly and a little bit at one time, because again, we are not looking to maximize returns. Okay.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for answering, Chris and Chuin Ting. We have one from Seo Heng. So he asked, are there plans to come up with a plan to auto-sweep portfolio cash into YSaver before the cash gets deducted monthly to buy dimensional funds?
That's why I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I need to call a friend, call my CTO. It's definitely something we have been thinking about, and we would love to do it. So there are certain limitations because not all the things are under our control. And of course, in unit trust, we have one disadvantage of unit trust is actually that's a bit of time for switching. So what we have, the next immediate step is actually to enable faster switching. As for auto sweep, I think is something that I think we would love to look into. Because obviously, yeah, it makes sense, right? Yeah, so we'll put that definitely on our list to consider.
All right, you guys mentioned earlier that MoneyOwl doesn't present ourselves as a robo-advisor. So can you share with us more what are the differences between MoneyOwl and other robos here in Singapore?
Yeah, I think I take that first and then Chuin Ting can jump in. So I think Chuin Ting has explained earlier already. I mean, most of the investment, in fact, all of the investment robo in Singapore that I know of, and in fact, most of the robos out there in other parts of the world, they are really investment robos. Yeah, now nothing wrong with that. If you are savvy, you just want to do investments, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, but MoneyOwl, we have chosen ourselves not just to focus on investments. Why? because Chuin Ting has also mentioned that before, because we believe that because one decision has an impact on other financial decisions in your life, it is actually very important for us to look at our finances holistically. It is very important to look at how insurance might affect investments, how investments might affect insurance. It is very important to look at our cash flow to make sure that financially we are healthy before even making investment decision. Just an example or case in point, right? At the start of the webinar, I talk about, well, if you are right now stress period and you feel like you want to invest your ordinary account money, if you come to Money Hour and we do that holistic financial planning for you, you may end up walking away with us telling you, please do not invest your CPF OA money, because we know that it is wiser actually for you to keep that as an emergency fund. Yeah. So that's what we mean. Now, when you do that with an investment robo, they might not have a full overview of your financial situation. What else are we different besides being comprehensive, besides having an insurance service, investment service, comprehensive financial planning service? Of course, many of you know that we also have a free will writing service right now, and this is really our social mission. We want you to go and do your will, and that's why it is free. Yeah, if you have got simple needs, just go and do that will. Yeah, just in case something happens, at least your family, the estate side will be taken care of. But what is also different about us is our deep belief in using human advisors. Our human advisors at Money Hour, they are not customer service officers. They are licensed advisors. They are not just trained in investments. They are trained in financial planning. They are trained in insurance. They understand estate. They understand the holistic view of what financial planning is all about. Because Money Hour is so serious in making sure that you do not just get licensed advisors, but qualified advisors. It is compulsory, actually, at Money Hour for the advisors to at least be AWP, and that means Associate Wealth Planner certified. And if I remember correctly, it's either all or almost all of our advisors are AWP, with some CFP and the rest working towards completing their certified financial planner. So I'll say that is the key difference. If you believe that your finances has to be looked at holistically, then don't just do investment as a standalone. Look at it holistically, integrate the various aspects. I think that is a lot wiser.
Chuin Ting, do you have anything you would like to add?
I think that from we inherit actually a depth of understanding about what financial advice actually is from our corporate parents, as well what financial planning is and what really the ordinary person needs to have in terms of the intent of the organization from our two corporate parents. And this is important to us because we really want to really care for fellow Singapore working families, and we are not into doing things to actually really just have empty growth in that sense. So I'm not saying that robos do that in general, but there is there is that support that we have from our corporate parents, and we want to give the assurance that it's actually really part of a suite of services that we give in the whole NTUC group. And we do believe actually really in human-centered advice because we think that humans understand humans best. And so we're not just about coding things into a slick UX, not just about, like as if we are selling electronics or groceries, on e-commerce platform, it's actually, yes, we have the best solutions as well, affordable level, but we go beyond that. And we want to be comprehensive, centered on humans, and also centered on you in your holistic plan.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, we have just in time for one last question. So don't worry if you've missed your question. Our team will reply to your comment even after the webinar. So one last question by Wing Yang Seng. what investment advice do you have for someone late in the game who don't have the luxury of compounded interest over a long runway?
Sorry, I think I'll take that, and Chuin Ting can add on. Thanks for that question, and it's a really good question to end tonight's webinar. Because if you are someone late in the game and you are near retirement, actually, if you come to Money Hour, the first thing we will want to look at is not investment. The first thing that we really want to look at is your CPF. Because like it or not, whether you like CPF schemes or not, it is there. And we have monies in our CPF. And over the years, I think more and more Singaporeans are becoming more aware that actually CPF is pretty good, right? It is safe, and especially in the special account, the interest can be as high as 5%, right? 4 to 5% return. And it's very hard to get a kind of return from an quote unquote instrument such as CPF. So the first thing that we would like to advise you and to work with you on would be your CPF, and to see how we can optimize your CPF further so that when you retire, you have a steady stream of income. And after we have done that, and that is, some people call it the safety net, once that is done, then we take a look at your cash side and we see whether we can invest your money. And I know that many of us think that when I'm near retirement, I don't have a long runway, but actually you do have, because your retirement, it's very long. If you are retiring at 65, the average life expectancy of Singapore being 85, you have a 20 years long runway. If you are today 55 years old, you have another 30 years runway. So we can't look at investment in isolation. We have to now look at it from also your CPF standpoint, right? And that's why we talk about holistic. Yeah, because if I've got your CPF settled and done, and I know that it's going to give you a very safe income stream, then I can take just a bit more risk for you for your investments, and especially you have a pretty long runway. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Don't let that shorter runway discourage you. I'm not that young. I'm 50 years old this year. I know I look like 35. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Okay, but I'm 50, and I know that sometimes we are like, oh, okay, I don't have time. But actually you do have, and it's good to actually start as early as possible. Okay, so Chuin Ting, I don't know whether you have anything else to add.
No, I think we're good. And I think we want to thank everyone for spending the last 1.5 hours a little bit more with us. We're a little bit over time, but I hope that it's been we've been useful to you in some way, and that you will also take a look at the initiatives that we've rolled out and see if there's something in there for you. Thank you again for all your questions, and really for spending time with us. We really appreciate you taking making this time with us today. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.